Welcome to another episode of Remap Radio. I am your host, Rob Zachney, and this is episode 116 for Halloween 2025. Today we are joined by Janet Garcia.
Ooh, hello.
Oh, wow. And we got Danica Herod. You got a spooky riff?
Ooh, I'm the ghost of Danica Herod.
All right. Patrick, what do you got?
Can you insert the Discord quote Halloween noise that sounds like Discord is broken
God, yeah, sure.
that I disabled because I thought, do I have a weird echo going on in my
Oh man,
computer?
you can disable it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Turn that shit off.
If you go into like the sound section,
It's been driving me insane.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I thought something was broken. It sounds like an echo.
But like I can't there's nothing sadder than like the digital decor of like places that are mainly for work, which I know Discord's like for funsies for a lot of people, but it's like for me it's mostly for work. So it's that, between that and then Slack being like, do you want a Halloween theme? And it's like a slightly different purple and there's a spider web in the upper left corner. And I'm
What
like,
does
I
Microsoft
guess
Teams
I guess
do?
it's time.
That's what I wanna know.
want to know. I don't want to know.
Microsoft Teams just pops up in places you wouldn't expect it. It just like does jump scares on different devices. Do you see the Asus ROG Ally shipping with Teams?
And that works just
a
fine.
thing people were talking about.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
I thought you were going to mention the Slack pumpkin someone made. The Slack lantern. Where it's like you pass it, it makes a Slack notification.
Oh, truly diabolical.
Hell. That's hell.
And of course, we also welcome our producer, Chia Contreras.
I've been dead the whole time.
Wow.
Wow.
As always, we're your listener and reader-supported show and website. If you enjoy Remap Radio and wish to become a supporter, you can learn more at remapradio.com/sign up, or just click the orange button in the upper right corner of the website. It's orange for the season, obviously. It's pumpkin orange. We're seasonal as hell over there. Our subscribers let us keep doing the shows, the streams, and the articles that define Remap. So I think we might as well get into this because there's a funny bit attached to this. Amazon is doing massive layoffs across the company. They're also going to be targeted layoffs at their games division. But related to that, some things came up about like
They have a game.
elements of Amazon's game strategy that maybe we weren't fully aware of, which maybe also speaks to why their game strategy might be a bit in the weeds.
Yeah, I think the number is they are laying off 14,000 quote corporate jobs across Amazon, which
That is
know what?
so many jobs. Were you going to say that's not that many jobs? In the
no.
grand scheme of things?
I was not going to say it was not that many jobs.
Okay. your tone. You're like, you know
Wow.
what?
I was going to say, I don't think in 2025 you're allowed to trot out the excuse once again of like, damn, we just really hired up during COVID. Well, I just don't know what to do with these jobs, which Amazon is
Yet
trotting
again.
out yet again. Yes, a lot of people staffed up over COVID. That excuse was, if it wasn't a reasonable excuse at all, has expired. And they're using that alongside, well, we simply, AI is just simply making us more efficient. And so, I don't know, go stand in a food line. I can figure it out. So there's 14,000 jobs kind of across Amazon, which is a massive number, obviously. It comes with, this is not their first layoff. Like, they have done sweeping 10,000 plus layoffs before. This seems to be sort of an annualized, sort of fun excess for the company. The video game division itself is getting hit particularly hard. Games like Tomb Raider being made at Crystal Dynamics are still in development alongside games for their Luna cloud service that nobody uses. Every time I get a press release, I'm shocked. Oh, that's still going. Like, you cancel all the other stuff, but like Luna, we're still doing Luna. They launched some Snoop Dogg multiplayer party game for it that was, of course, AI driven. I don't even know if Snoop recorded voice acting for that game. They're pausing development on New World, a MMO for PC and consoles that had like a really skyrocketing launch and then a bumpy middle patch. And then
They also just rolled out an update, didn't they?
a very well-received update that had a lot of people saying feels like this game was one of those turning the corner, like might be able to sustain an audience going forward. It's called the Night Haven update. season 10 of that game, and now that game is going to be headed towards what they call maintenance mode. But they're promising these servers will operate through 2026. But they've, quote, reached a point where it is no longer sustainable to continue supporting the game with new content updates, which sounds like bullshit. This seems like mostly an excuse for the company to kind of rip through, especially their games approach, which has been haphazard at best. Like Amazon has for a decade plus attempted to, if you're trying to be nice crack video games that mostly just waste hundreds of millions of dollars on pointless endeavors that rarely go anywhere. I missed the part about the Steam thing.
Can you please read Ethan Evans' LinkedIn post out loud, who was the VP of Prime Gaming at Amazon. Jason Schreier posted something.
Ethan Evans posts on LinkedIn as VP of Prime Gaming at Amazon. We failed multiple times to disrupt the game platform Steam. We were at least 250 times bigger, and we tried everything, but ultimately Goliath lost. Here's why. The 15-plus year-long attempt to challenge Steam started before I was VP of Prime Gaming, but we never cracked the code, not under my leadership or anyone else's. The first way we tried to enter the online game store market was through acquisition. We acquired Reflexive Entertainment, a small PC game store, and tried to scale it. It went nowhere. Does anyone know what Reflexive Entertainment is? Has anyone heard?
No.
Who the fuck?
They didn't even buy Digital River.
Then, after buying Twitch, we created our own PC game store. Our assumption was that gamers would naturally buy from us because they were already using Twitch. Wrong. Finally, we built Luna, a game streaming service that let people play without a high-end PC. Around the same time, Google tried the same thing with their product, Stadia. Neither gained significant traction. The whole time, Steam dominated despite being a relatively small company compared to Amazon and Google. There's a mistake was that we underestimated what made consumers use Steam. It was a store, a social network, a library, and a trophy case all in one. And it worked well. In Amazon, we assumed that size and visibility would be enough to attract customers. But we underestimated the power of existing user habits. We never validated our core assumptions before investing heavily in solutions. That's a really fucking funny thing to say. The truth is that gamers already had the solution to their problems, and they weren't going to switch platforms just because a new one was available. We needed to build something dramatically better, but we failed to do so. And we needed to validate our assumptions about our customers for starting to build. But we never really did that either. Just because you were big enough to build something doesn't mean people will use it. I gotta be honest, shockingly honest explanation about that, like their attempts to compete with Steam. You could just swap out that for many of their attempts to get into video games more broadly, which is we're just big and can spend a bunch of money. Surely we'll create something that is dominating and will control the market. And they failed over and over again. So I got to give credit to Ethan. I don't think you're supposed to say this shit out loud. I don't think you're supposed to say, like, wrong. Like, this reads more like an internal memo, a crisis memo of what went wrong at 15 years of Amazon.
There's a lot of fascinating stuff in there. I think the thing that I've heard about Amazon is that among like the tech giants, one of the things they are known for, and this goes back to fairly early days, is that they do tend to force people to use internal like developed platforms and tools, no matter how much they suck, with the theory that eventually we will build functionality that we will want, and then that will, by like just through that process, we will have achieved functionality that other people will want. And so from what I understand is a lot of Amazon internal development looks really ramshackle and looks like a lot of people like building absolutely misguided shit that they just sort of brute force their way through to a viable state. And then they kind of scale that out and it kind of works. This is partly like the origin of AWS. But this is one of those things where, like, I think the limitations of that approach are, it's one thing if you're building something for running large online businesses. You're building stuff that other businesses of a similar type are going to build. But there's no expertise in Amazon, nor is there a need internally. Like, we need to have our own game store. You really kind of need to figure out what people are getting out of Steam at that point. And the thing that's breathtaking here is the complete lack of insight about, like, Steam was not particularly new or novel. This wasn't. It wasn't like reconnoitering like a distant alien planet. Like, this is a really well-known quantity that you should have been able to figure out pretty easily. Like, why do people like this thing so much? Why has no one else been able to crack it? And they just kind of went in with zero understanding, not just of how people use Steam, but also shit like Twitch, where it's like, well, obviously, if you're watching games, you're playing games. And if you're playing games, you're buying games. You want to do that all in one place. It's kind of like, and I don't know if this ever works, but you know how every TV now is like there's a button you can press and it'll try to sell you something that's on the screen? Like
Roku TV. Yeah. I love that shit.
The Roku City.
I live in Roku City.
Like there's a button on my LG that I constantly like accidentally press that's like looking into the scene to identify this product. And it never works unless there is a tie-in.
Oh, that's different.
Rewind.
That's different.
I think you have a much newer TV probably than any of us. So you're on the cutting edge of bullshit on a remote. You have to set this up.
Cutting edge of bullshit is like a wild tagline.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like on my TV, I'm annoyed that I connected it to the internet. I didn't think about it when I was like, setting up the TV.
I regret this too.
And when I had the TV, it did not have a landing page that it could send you to, that like the Vizio hub. Now it does. And the Vizio hub kicks in if your input source is idle for more than 5 seconds. This is like, oh, there's nothing there. Let's go to the Vizio hub. Like, we love the Vizio hub. It's like, no. I just didn't hit power on like the Blu-ray player yet. Like, it doesn't do the handshake properly. So we got to switch to that. And I'm going to turn that on and then we're going to be fine. No, we want to go to the Vizio hub. Like, you want to, because in the Vizio hub, like, we can find Tubi. It's like, I have Tubi. It's an app. Tubi. And it only happened because I let the firmware of the TV update at some point.
Gross.
They gave me no new meaningful features. It just gave me the bullshit Vizio hub that you cannot disable. You can't roll back the firmware. I can't turn this off as a default place to go. But I don't have a button on my TV
Rob,
that will scan, Rob.
Most people that I know have like the TCL TVs because they're extremely affordable.
Yeah.
And they come with, their Roku TVs and you fucking live in Roku City and it's awesome.
Yeah,
but
it's great.
I don't know what I would do if my TV was Google image searching things.
So what happens?
So first of all,
That
I have a
seems
TCL
cursed.
as well. And I also love living in Roku City, especially when they bring out the seasonal like decorations for Roku City, where it's like, hey, you know what? Is it like June and you kind of miss Christmas? Roku City might still have Christmas. You don't know. It might still be snowing in Roku City. So that stuff's going on. But no, so this LG, and to be clear, they had this, like, my TV's like 5 years old at this point. So like they rolled this out a while ago. But it is this thing where, and again, it is a thing that I've accidentally pressed, but I've never intentionally used it. I'm looking at my remote right now. Like, what button triggers this?
Can you show it to us?
Yeah, what is it?
I want to see this visually we'll communicate it to the audience.
No, like I can't, because I can't make it happen on demand.
I'm sorry.
It's not labeled as
While Rob is looking for this, I feel like I need to comment on Patrick's nails because your nails are hot pink, and I feel like you need a fancy, like, super long cigarette holder. Like, you would look cool like that.
I need to get into Galinda's smoking era.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Anyway, sorry,
missing link.
Rob. So no
Also,
button.
I didn't realize that, like, my TV doesn't have any of this stuff y'all talking about. Like, even the Roku City thing, like, I had to look that up, and I'm like, I thought that you guys were just memeing, like, take me down to Roku City where the grass is green, the girls are pretty kind of vibe.
No.
It's actually called Roku
Where the
City.
ads are
Yeah.
put.
What?
Thank you very much.
What is happening on all y'all? I just have Apple TV hooked up to my TV.
You could
Oh, well,
have had
that's-
your
you
honeymoon
just
in
sidestepped
Roku
it.
City. Like, you're missing out. You're missing out. Roku City
I do like
is
a little
kind
town
of the
builder. Is
Yeah,
this
it's
kinda
kind
like
of the
the
place
town
to
builder
be.
of TV?
Well, you just chill, and like you're taken on a ride through Roku City. It doesn't matter where you're sitting, standing in your home. you're going on a ride through Roku City.
Roku City
it's
has
always the same
references
ride.
to all your famous
Hey,
movies.
imagine Cozy Cannibalt is
Okay.
kind of the vibe where it's like there's giant cute. It's a skyline shot. There's cute robots in the background because like sci-fi is fun,
Yeah.
but then in the foreground there's like people going to the movies, and you can join them on your Roku TV because the movies are all there.
You can
Just
see
waiting
just
for
like
you.
a giant billboard for the Weird Al movie with Daniel Radcliffe that came out
Yes.
for like 6
The-
months straight at a time. It kind of has everything you want.
It's a fun movie.
Okay.
I actually have
Sure.
insight. I actually have insight into. It's funny because this ties back to Luna. I have insight into like the undercarriage of Luna, and strangely related to that movie somehow. But their gaming team is tiny. Like their gaming team is teeny tiny, and also like everyone is miserable because it's kind of the Waypoint situation where like Amazon will hire people who like care about games, but then they are just constantly running up against red tape from execs who like do not understand. You know, they're like, what can we do with Fortnite
Yeah.
for Luna?
I think I've told this story before, but before I decided to fuck off and ride off into the sunset, do corporate work for Red Bull, I was interviewing for a like senior position at a games outlet, like very senior, probably more senior than I should have done. I'm not sure I would have done super well in it, but
Oh, I remember this. I remember
yeah.
this one. Yeah.
because the person, like someone had just vacated that position and gone to Amazon. And then like the bigwig over there, like called me up and was like, listen, this is really embarrassing. You were gonna be our pick for this role. And I don't know if they were being kind. Hearing this was not necessarily the kindest thing you could have said. Like, did it make me feel kind of like, oh, I more confidence? Sure. Did I also really not want to hear how close I was to a steady gig at that moment? Also true. But the reason I wasn't going to get the gig is because the person that I was going to be replacing went to Amazon, worked there for a week, less, immediately called their old outlet and was like, I made a huge mistake. Can we just pretend I never quit and I just come back? And they were like,
Oh,
yeah,
no.
you can. Because it was like in the space of 4 days, it was clear that there was no direction. It just like the vibe was extremely bad. The stuff that had been talked about in the interview versus the reality on the ground was like night and day, and it was you gotta go, you gotta bail. So that has been like how Amazon games have worked for quite some time. But yeah, like this sort of failure to understand any of this, and I guess that does kind of make sense because like Amazon's big. They've run a ton of other realtors out of business, and they're now in competition with just a handful of other mega titans. Would you say Amazon has a particular insight into like consumers or like shopping experience versus like just ways they can hack that experience to like muscle in and promote their own product? Like, it's not a good store. It's an effective store for Amazon, but like there is kind of a, if you were looking for how do you build a good online shopping experience, it's been a long time since you would point to Amazon as the place to go do that. And you can sort of see where that would carry over into, well, how do you make people buy games from Amazon? Well, I don't know. We bought Twitch. They should buy games from us. What do you want from us?
It's
Well,
very
they
funny.
failed at the fundamental. You know, no one likes to use EA's launcher. No one likes to use Ubisoft's launcher. Why do people end up using those? Because you make content, you make games that make it inescapable to engage with those. And so Amazon's primary failure, other than just fundamentally misunderstanding creating a better class of product, like look at Epic Game Store, right? Like, why is the Epic Game Store successful? Not because it's any good. The Epic Game Store is an awful like UI experience, user experience, but I can buy Alan Wake 2 there. So I'm going to sign up. Oh, I play Fortnite. I will sign up for the Epic Game Store. So Steam started that way. Like, Steam was an awful awful experience when Half-Life 2 launched. People, if you were there on the ground floor, the amount of vitriol that people had at Valve for the audacity to launch, it was Half-Life 2, right? That launched through Steam, and like it wouldn't, it like crashed day one. It was a miserable experience. It is nothing like what it is today. It's something they've iterated on for literal decades at this point. But even Valve started with a Hook, which was the sequel to one of the most important, successful video games of all time. And we're going to shove a digital storefront through it. And Amazon never had that hook. You cannot think of a single game that you associate with Amazon. Even their biggest successes, like Lord of the Rings Online or Lost Ark, are not considered Amazon games. And when I've talked to folks that have worked over there, Amazon would never take credit and just double down on the successes that did work for them, which is, what can a company with like massive logistical operations do? Well, they could localize Korean MMOs and then bring them over. So Lost Ark is one of those. And that game was really, really successful. It is so much cheaper to take a game that is already made by another company, take on the really arduous task of converting it to a bunch of different languages, handling all the customer support. And that's what they did for Lost Ark. And that went really, really well for them. But they failed, like many other companies do, at saying, we have a lot of money, we'll just make video games. Netflix continues to fail in this regard. Amazon spent 10 plus years throwing money at the wall and not making anything. So they could have made people use an Amazon store if there was a game worth a damn buying through it and you couldn't get it anywhere else. And like, one of the last games they put out was a game called King of Meat, which you don't know what that game is because its concurrents on Steam at its peak were 253. And we talked many times about not using concurrents as a measure of success, but in this case, it is worth pointing out. And the only reason you might think King of Meat, why is that scratching an itch in the back of my head? It's because it was the trailer at, I think, Gamescom, where Jeff Keighley was featured in it at a certain point. Do you remember like an animated, goofy cartoon trailer with Jeff Keighley?
I'll never forget. Yes. Also, it was it had like big placement at SGF as well that year. Which like, does 1 + 1 = 2? I mean, today it does, right? Where it's like, a project that Keighley was involved in having, I mean, obviously Amazon in general and Netflix to that end have had presences at SGF for like some time. They're kind of like, it's funny how, we had that conversation about like SGF versus E3 and like where like kind of conferences and expos have gone. And like, back in the day, E3, you had the big three. For SGF, you have, I think I heard PlayStation's here. Xbox is on another part from like not associated with the campus, but they're there at the same time. And then you always have Amazon and Netflix. And Netflix has like a cute artsy thing. Yeah. Yes, no one was there. But you know what Amazon does have? Because they have money. The biggest spread, the biggest booth, the biggest tent, like, and look, I don't cover stuff for like the things I get. Like, I think that's kind of what you're supposed to do with this job. But, I think there have been some people that maybe have booked those appointments because they're like, oh, you can eat. Because it's like it's like you're not in the sun. Like that's what it is. It's a cabana. There's very, very few. You have to have very specific interests to, I think, have signed up for those appointments genuinely, which some people do because they're like, oh, I'm into some MMO, whatever, genres like I don't even play at all. But yeah, and that's part of them trying to, push into the space or like make a name in that space. And it's been a struggle. I think with the Luna stuff in particular, something that's kind of crazy to me is, which the person, Danica, when you like shared this Blue Sky post, like the person who had written this pointed out, which is like, I didn't even know they were competing with Steam.
I just can't believe this was 15 years in the making, that they're like, I think we can compete with Steam. And it's been 15 years.
I think this is one of the reasons, like a company like that could be terrifying to work for, but also like weirdly secure, is that company, like, it is the sort of company that might wake up one morning and be like, what the fuck are all these people doing here? because the company hasn't really checked in on like executive or director level like operations in a minute, and there are no consequences because you're made of money, so it's not like anybody really notices like money going down a rat hole. But at any moment they might be like, holy shit, we need to cut costs, look around, what's going on in here. Did you know we were doing this? I didn't know we were doing this. And suddenly your whole team gets blown away because like there was no buy-in for your project. You weren't like effectively directed anywhere, but you were still getting paid and no one cared. So you knew you would be like first in line for the axe probably if anyone ever like woke up to this. But as long as the company stays asleep, you know, a gig's a gig. But like places like that do, I suspect, tend to be like teams like that also tend to not get off the ground because they become retention nightmares. Like people do not want to work in places where their work feels meaningless or gets thrown away. Right. So like a lot of people will like look around and leave because that level of instability and uncertainty they don't want to live with, and also you don't want to be clocking in every day and just like every 6 months we need to pivot in a new direction. I mean, obviously, we did it.
Well, hear me out. As someone who just worked at Salesforce for 4 years, there is this weird, I guess, there's security and delusion, and also working in tech is kind of like working in big tech where a company has surpassed a certain size. You know, you're past the like 50,000 employee mark. If you are not in some extremely important role, you know, you're developing like the new thing that the CEO has their eyes on, you can kind of just like fuck off until a round of layoffs happens that affects you. Like it got to the point where I was doing work that I was proud of while I was at Salesforce, but we had a reorg in January, and that's when I knew things were kind of going downhill. At that point, I was just like moving my fucking mouse every 20 minutes. Like I was so checked out. And if there was something that I needed to do, I was like, all right, well, I'll spend 2 hours Friday doing my work for the week and whatever. And you know what? I was still doing more than great on my evaluations, and people who were doing much more important work than me were laid off. So yeah, this is just like, it's part of the weird false sense of security in tech that you can just go 15 years working on something and trying to compete with Steam, and Amazon execs will just let you do it because they have other shit they're fucking worried about.
And then they're so secure in their positions in life. They can go on LinkedIn and be like, let me tell you my key learnings about the time me and my leadership team just fucked up for 15 years.
Wrong.
So brave, so honest. Clap emojis.
How do you last that long and not think like at all about the way consumers use the product you're trying to sell them, right? Like it's just like the bold-faced admission of like, we didn't really look into that. Like
I would bet you there's a combination of, I mean, we don't know, first of all, how much this person directly oversaw every stage of those efforts. They were part of a 15-year effort. I don't know if they were sort of commanding a 15-year
the whole
effort.
time. That's fair, yeah.
But you can also sort of imagine, like, the Twitch thing, for instance, is we definitely like to build a storefront. Yeah. And we definitely like to do something with Twitch. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, now you have to make them kiss. Make them go together. And so I would imagine there's a lot of stuff where you're trying to come up with synergies and making something out of the various stuff that's in your property warehouse at a big company that doesn't really make sense, but that is the stuff that gets buy-in at the high level. Yeah. And so you rarely do have that like distilled down focus on like, let's build a competitor to Steam. Because fundamentally, I think, you know, as you know, you've alluded to, Patrick, and a few other people pointed out, like the only way you've historically made inroads into getting users for a launcher storefront platform is to hold something people want hostage. That is how Steam did it, and that is the road that I think GOG had a decent customer base before Witcher 3 was sort of wedded to GOG, but Witcher 3 being on GOG certainly helped, and they didn't remove that exclusivity, I think, for a while before it hit Steam.
Well, they also have the DRM free, right? Pitch that happens on GOG. But you know who's reporting quarterly losses now? GOG, because it doesn't have Cyberpunk's a couple of years old. Witcher's not really a pull as much anymore. It gets a spike when a Cyberpunk animated show hits or a Witcher new season hits Netflix. But otherwise, like, GOG has the nostalgia pitch, but that's a pretty niche pitch, like, to get people. Like, people are coming in because, look, am I going to go buy Clive Barker's Undying because they just announced it for the preservation program? Yes. Did we buy like $40 of golf games when we did the last time we did a live stream? Yes. Am I opening GOG for any other reason? Absolutely not. And so it is. Steam becomes part of people's daily lives in the way that Amazon can be a poor storefront, but becomes part of people's daily engine for how they run their day or they get something. And then also, if you live close enough to a factory where you can order something at 10 and it shows up at 2, that's just, it doesn't matter how bad your UI or what you're doing. Like, that's just impossible to compete with. They have no such pitch for that on video games.
The problem Oh, go ahead, Gia.
I was just going to say really quickly, this is the thing that I find particularly funny about the situation, is that Amazon writ large kind of understood the convenience is king situation within their own platform, but it's like, you really have to put, like, how are you more convenient than the thing everyone's already got their entire libraries in, right? Like, it's nigh impossible. And just, like, the, like, mismatch there is just kind of funny.
Well, and I think some of these companies are also going to be very leery of cracking open lobbying for, like, legislative relief because they're running unfair competition practices and monopolies in other parts of the business. So it's like it's hard to articulate the case against Steam from the standpoint of, like, regulators should probably do something about this at this point, when you're kind of trying to position yourself as, like, the Steam of retail consumption to an extent. So it's hard to sort of turn around and make that case. Another thing, though, company higher ups can do is they can just there's other like smart business moves they can do. They can mandate profit margins, for instance. That is a thing that we learned last week. Jason Schreier reporting that Microsoft set a 30% profit target for their games division.
Yes, which I think helps. Has been pointed to as an explanation for many of the, I don't think it doesn't explain all of the poor decisions out of Xbox or confusing leadership or direction decisions out of Microsoft, but a 30% margin is not what most hardware platforms are operating under. The estimates I saw going around are closer to 10 to 15%, 20% in great times. Nintendo is sort of an outlier because of how they run their business. But if you're looking for sort of historical examples, 30% is just not what you're looking for. And 30% thus means you are forced into increasingly drastic scenarios in order to cut further to the bone in order to make the business make sense, which does help explain. So, how do we go from 4 games are coming from Xbox to PlayStation to, Halo's new, campaign remake is really being pitched as PlayStation first and also on Xbox. That's because how do all these layoffs happen along the way? Well, because it's the fastest way to get to a margin that you're being expected to hit. Otherwise, I don't know, they shutter the division? What do they care if they keep doing video games?
I think it's happening because Microsoft Teams comes pre-installed on the Ally.
once Team starts printing the infinite money, things will ease up there. That's maybe the division could probably earn themselves some slack from the rest of the company if they just started putting teams into like the games themselves, not just like on the Xbox interface, but like imagine you're playing Indiana Jones in the Great Circle and you're like, hang on, let's circle back and conference right now. Hey, let's screen share.
Okay. Tomato.
I lost 1 year off my life from hearing you say that.
So there's another interesting thing in Jason's report there, which is that one of the complaints people aired was that the mandate that everything sort of be day and date on Game Pass has not been good for a ton of people whose business it is at Microsoft to sell their games. And according to some people that Jason talked to, quoting from the article here, Xbox offers its developers a credit which it calls member-weighted value and is calculated based on several factors, such as the number of hours that Game Pass players collectively spend on a particular title. The opaque formula seems to favor games in which players can spend the most amount of hours, such as online multiplayer titles, according to people familiar with the calculations. So I think this kind of does dovetail with some of the I don't think. Hang on. I'm probably the wrong person to ask about this because we've discussed I have a weird relationship to value. But I do not think people necessarily regard subscriptions as like pure hours of utility they get out of something. And if you're looking at it that way, you're going to like someone might have Game Pass and they're sinking tons and tons of hours into some sort of like crafting survival game. That they might be doing that, but they probably are. That might not be why people subscribe to Game Pass though. And that I think is where things get murky. Like part of the value might be in the same way that like the joke about like people with subscriptions to the New Yorker, months behind on the articles, haven't read shit. They like being the sort of people that subscribe to the New Yorker, though. It is important to them to like have that come in and think of all the good stuff that's in that. I look forward to that. There's such good writing, such good editing. Obviously, I want that. In terms of like entertainment per dollar, the New Yorker is probably not leading that calculation. That would be an easy place for people to cut.
Yeah, but you think you're paying. You think you're support. Like you're being a patron, basically. Like I'm paying a subscription to the New Yorker. Sure, I'm not caught up in everything they're creating, but the money I'm spending is extending my values, using my money to support work that I want to exist.
And it will be there if I want it.
Correct. And I think there's probably a reasonable assumption that I don't know if people are buying Game Pass thinking like I'm supporting the video game industry as a medium, but I think it is a reasonable assumption to make that okay, I don't want to play any of the games this month, but I want to keep Game Pass. I've got it at this certain like monthly rate or whatever, or I bought it in advance. Like at least it's cool to know that like my money is like abstractly you might think is going to the developers, but if the calculation is that it's all going to Microsoft unless you engage with the game and an hour count is hit. This is how Apple Arcade was pitched as well, which was like, how do we get developers on board with this? Like, well, you'll come on Apple Arcade, you won't be on the App Store, there'll be a subscription model, and you will get a payout based on how much people engage with your individual game on an hourly level. And then over the years, developers stopped supporting Apple Arcade because they weren't getting paid jack shit. Because people liked subscribing to Apple Arcade so they could look at a big spread of games and maybe they would download one or two, and then it just became part of their monthly subscription. They didn't really think about how much they engaged with it, or it gets bundled in with another Apple subscription they have, and developers bounced out of it because there's no financial reason for them to participate in the subscription. And I think there's a similar sort of tension there with Game Pass, where, at the end of the day, are you paying whatever amount a month? Is that all just going to Microsoft? It sounds increasingly, if that is the transaction the developer has outside of some other one-time payment, we're like, hey, we're going to cover what would be a 1 month's equatable revenue, and then after that we're going to switch to an hourly based sort of metric. That's a wobbly place to be.
Well, they know it's a wobbly place to be. They know it's going to work in their favor, right? Microsoft.
Right.
Yeah.
So me putting my controller down to like make a sandwich for 30 minutes is actually me supporting developers.
Yeah.
Finally, my inflated hour count can be used for good.
But especially make sure you do that during like a single player game, ideally one
Yeah.
that's kind of short, narrative focused, and then just go and make an entire meal. Really.
Exactly. We're bringing back the old school days where you would leave your console on because you couldn't like save or something. But it's just like I'm leaving my console on so that the developers can make more games. But yeah, it's I feel like it's particularly rough to position the payout you get on hour count because people don't play the games they have or buy. People don't even play the games they buy directly. Like that is just true. That's why I joked that like if you're a real gamer, you didn't actually finish the game because statistically most of them don't. It's also why like the beginning of a game is so important because for a lot of people that's all they're gonna really play is the first couple hours. So it does become these sort of, in a way, the narrative of like, with, oh yeah, I remember that was good. It's like, did you actually finish it? It's like, mind your business. It's like, people aren't finishing these things as well. So it's, and even before, I think it was before we started recording, we were talking about like Patrick, you mentioned like falling asleep to like watching a football game. You can't like fall asleep while playing a game. I mean, the game will be on, so I guess it'll count for the hour count, but that's not the same thing.
Different.
It's not going to be like there's similar problems to like whenever you try to track, I think, user behavior to try to tell you, oh, this thing is adding value. It's always going to be missing critical information. I mean, we even have this conversation from like a streaming standpoint with like TV shows, movies, etc. Because it's like, well, more people are watching because you don't know how many people are in my house watching this thing. You only see like that one account and how that can not give the full story. But again, to your point, Danica, the truth is they don't need the full story. They just need a metric that can, hey, this is how oh man, that's wild. But this is how it works. And we set that system up.
You get 50 cents this month. Sorry, y'all. We get thousands of dollars, but we're gonna send you the relevant amount for how much people played your game.
The thing is, like, I have a certain amount of sympathy for even signing up for what sounds like an awful bargain because, I mean, Chi and I see this all the time when we do like the Steam Vent feature. Like, how do you get noticed? Sure, maybe you sacrifice potential revenue in a Game Pass deal in which it's all hour count, but you get the added benefit of like, well, they're going to put out a press release in which you get listed with like 6 games. Like, hey, like these are the games coming to Game Pass like this month and will be here for whatever is the extension of the deal. It's at least like a platform that says like your game's important. We're going to list it as a bullet point, and it's increasingly hard to just get any sort of awareness or visibility that feels guaranteeable other than trying to like work your way through the Steam algorithm or becoming a viral game of the moment that takes off with, how do I get Northern Lion to play my game? Like, it's not necessarily, it is a strategy. I read about it all the time. But I can imagine signing up simply from a visibility standpoint. I'm like, well, at least our game gets promoted somewhere. And sure, we lose on Xbox, but maybe we end up making it up on Steam because we get promoted in this one spot.
That's the never-ending cycle of doing work for exposure.
There's also there's like sometimes an upfront, or is that not always an upfront like payment as well, right?
There can be, yes, like where there is either. I mean, sometimes they're covering development costs, sometimes they're covering marketing costs, sometimes they're covering projected revenue for X amount of time, and like, hey, we're gonna eat that. But those deals were more lucrative several years ago, in the same way that Apple Arcades were lucrative several years ago, and now clearly developers are still signing on. But it's not clear to me. I'm not sure if you saw any of that in Jason's report, Rob, of like what these deals entail these days that are still enticing folks onto the system for the risk reward approach.
Yeah, I'd be super curious just to have an understanding, because from what I've gathered from reading things here and there is that developers do not get that great of a deal with Game Pass, and it has continuously gotten worse. But It's not like I have a dev coming to me and saying that.